Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. At this time, to inshallah begin the program for the second night of the celebration of Eid al-Ghadeer, I'd like to request Sayyid Mehdi for recitation of Holy Quran with Allah salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. حرمت عليكم الميتة والدم ولحم الخنزير وما أهل لغير الله به والمنخنقة والموقوذة والمتردية والنطيحة وما أكل السبع إلا ما ذكيتم وما ذبح على النصب وإن تستقسموا بالأزلام ذلكم فسق. اليوم يئس الذين كفروا من دينكم فلا تخشوهم واخشون اليوم أكملت لكم دينكم وأتممت عليكم نعمتي ورضيت لكم الإسلام دينا فمن اضطر في مخمصة غير متجانف للإثم فإن الله غفور رحيم. يسألونك ماذا أحل لهم قل أحل لكم الطيبات وما علمتم من الجوارح مكلبين تعلمونهم مما علمكم الله فكلوا مما أمسكن عليكم واذكروا اسم الله عليه واتقوا الله إن الله سريع الحساب. الطيبات وطعام الذين أوتوا الكتاب حل لكم وطعامكم حل لهم والمحصنات من المؤمنات والمحصنات من الذين أوتوا الكتاب من قبلكم إذا آتيتموهن أجورهن محسنين غير مسافحين ولا متخذي أخدان ومن يكفر بالإيمان فقد حبط عمله وهو في الآخرة من الخاسرين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا قمتم إلى الصلاة فاغسلوا وجوهكم وأيديكم إلى المرافق وامسحوا برؤوسكم وأرجلكم إلى الكعبين وإن كنتم جنبا فاطهروا وإن كنتم مرضى أو على سفر أو جاء أحد منكم من الغائط أو لامستم النساء فلم تجدوا ماء فتيمموا صعيدا طيبا فامسحوا بوجوهكم وأيديكم منه ما يريد الله ليجعل عليكم من حرج ولكن يريد ليطهركم وليتم نعمته عليكم لعلكم تشكرون. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Jazakallah khair, brother Sayyid Mehdi. Another loud salawat for him, please. At this time, I'd like to request Brother Taha Ali for recitation of Manqabat with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ale Muhammad.
शेर खुदा दामाद पैगंबर हैदर 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 शेर खुदा दामाद पैगंबर हैदर 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 शेर खुदा दामाद पैगंबर हैदर 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 शाफ़ाए महशर साक़ी कौसर हैदर 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 बोलना मैंने जब सीखा था, माँ ने मेरी ये मुझसे कहा था। बोलना मैंने जब सीखा था, माँ ने मेरी ये मुझसे कहा था। बोलो बेटा जान लगा कर, हैदर 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 या अली। बोलो बेटा जान लगा कर, हैदर 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 हैदर। मेरी वसीयत याद ये रखना, कब्र के बाहर तुम सब कहना। मेरी वसीयत याद ये रखना, कब्र के बाहर तुम सब कहना। खुद मैं कहूँगा कब्र के अंदर, हैदर 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 हैदर। खुद मैं कहूँगा कब्र के अंदर, हैदर 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 हैदर। वाकिफ थे आदाब विला से, कलमा अधूरा कैसे पढ़ते। वाकिफ थे आदाब विला से, कलमा अधूरा कैसे पढ़ते। दस्त नबी पर बोले कंकर, हैदर 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 हैदर। दस्त नबी पर बोले कंकर, हैदर 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 हैदर। शबर और शबीर हो राजी, सेवण वाला पीर हो राजी। शबर और शबीर हो राजी, सेवण वाला पीर हो राजी। बोलो सखी शाहबाज कलंदर, हैदर 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 हैदर। बोलो सखी शाहबाज कलंदर, हैदर 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 हैदर। जिक्र अली पर पाबंदी थी, लेकिन ज़ैनब ऐसे बोली। जिक्र अली पर पाबंदी थी, लेकिन ज़ैनब ऐसे बोली। गूंज उठा दरबार के अंदर, हैदर 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 हैदर। गूंज उठा दरबार के अंदर, हैदर 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 हैदर। उसको लगा रहता है खतरा, बिगड़ा हुआ है जिसका शजरा। उसको लगा रहता है खतरा, बिगड़ा हुआ है जिसका शजरा। आ नहीं सकता उसकी ज़बां पर, हैदर 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 हैदर। आ नहीं सकता उसकी ज़बां पर, हैदर 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 हैदर। डूबने वाली थी जब कश्ती, नूह ने आखिर किसको सदा दी। डूबने वाली थी जब कश्ती, नूह ने आखिर किसको सदा दी। बस ये सदा थी नूह के लब पर, हैदर 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 हैदर। बस ये सदा थी नूह के लब पर, हैदर 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 हैदर। मीसम से ये मुझको मिली है, मैंने किताबे इश्क पढ़ी है। मीसम से ये मुझको मिली है, मैंने किताबे इश्क पढ़ी है। पहला सबक है उसके अंदर, हैदर 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 हैदर। पहला सबक है उसके अंदर, हैदर 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 हैदर। मौत से डरता है न डरा है, वो इश्क तकल्लुम बोल रहा है। मौत से डरता है न डरा है, इश्क तकल्लुम बोल रहा है। दार के ऊपर ज़ेरे खंजर, हैदर 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 हैदर। दार के ऊपर ज़ेरे खंजर, हैदर 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 हैदर। शेर खुदा दामाद पैगंबर, हैदर 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 हैदर। शाफ़ाए महशर साक़ी कौसर, हैदर 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 हैदर। बर मोहम्मद व आले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम।
Jazakallah khair. Brother Taha Ali very well recited. One loud salmat for him, please. At this time, I'd like to request Brother Hasan Abbas Kanani for recitation of poetry with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ale Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Congratulations to us all, and above all to the Imam of our time for Eid al-Ghadeer. Bawaz buland salawat. एक मनक़बत के दो अशार पेश हैं और फिर एक और मनक़बत के चंद अशार। सूरज ये कह के दीन का उभरा गदीर में, सूरज ये कह के दीन का उभरा गदीर में, सूरज ये कह के दीन का उभरा गदीर में, तकमील आज पाएगा कलमा गदीर में, सूरज ये कह के दीन का उभरा गदीर में, और बाजू बुलंद करके दिखाते रहे रसूल, बाजू बाजू बुलंद करके दिखाते रहे रसूल, अंधों ने फिर भी कुछ नहीं देखा गदीर में, जब से अली है तब से है मौलाए कायनात, जब से अली है तब से है मौलाए कायनात, ऐलान तयशुदा था जो होगा गदीर में, सूरज सलावत। बसद शिको फशीरो नज़ीर आ पहुँचे, लिए सहाबा का जम्मे गफीर आ पहुँचे, ज़नानो तिफलो सगीरो कबीर आप मुझे कबूल हज के लिए सब गदीर आप मुझे निदा ये आई के शाहो वजीर आते हैं अमीर बनने जनाबे अमीर आते हैं अली हैदरी हैदरी अमीर बनने जनाबे अमीर आते हैं नया खतीब था मिंबर नया बनाया गया अली वली है ये पैगाम फिर सुनाया गया और उसके बाद वो मिंबर नया मिटाया गया बना के और मिटा के यही बताया गया कि तुम कभी न ये कहना कि है किसी का है विलायतों का ये मिंबर फकत अली का है विलायतों का ये मिंबर फकत अली का है या अली वसी को कांधे पे अपने उठा रहे थे नबी खुदा के हुक्म से मौला बना रहे थे नबी अली को पुश्त पे खुद को छुपा रहे थे नबी छुपा के खुद को ये सबको बता रहे थे नबी कि मेरे बाद नहीं देखना किसी की तरफ जो देखना हो तो बस देखना अली की तरफ या अली हैदरी हैदरी जो देखना हो तो बस देखना अली की तरफ अली है अमीर खुदा और खुद अमीर भी है अली खुदा की नजर और खुद नजीर भी है खुदा की सिमत सफ़र भी है और सफीर भी है अली गुरूर बशर भी है बशीर भी है मिटा के एक नई दुनिया बना भी सकता है जला भी सकता है मुर्दे जिला भी सकता है जला भी सकता है मुर्दे जिला भी सकता है और ये आखिरी शेर अली वली है ये हुक्म अली वली है ये अली वली है ये हुक्म खालिके गफ्फार अली के दम से है कायम विलायतों की बहार है ताबा हश्र अली ही गदीर का मुख्तार सोताबा हश्र माजिद हमारी भी है पुकार उन्हें बता दो जो ये कहते हैं गलत है गदीर कि सबके बाप के शजरों पे दस्तखत है गदीर कि सबके बाप के शजरों पे दस्तखत है गदीर बसद शिको फशीरो नजीर आ पहुँचे पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
Jazakallah khair, Brother Hassan Abbas Kanani. Another loud salawat for him, please. At this time, I'd like to request our last reciter for the evening, Brother Faizan, for recitation of poetry, and ask their brothers and sisters to move as close to a member so that we can make this last recitation as joyous as possible with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
अस्सलामु अलैकुम। सबसे पहले आप सबको ईद गदीर बहुत बहुत मुबारक हो। मौला अली की शान में मनक़बत की चंद अशआर पेश करूँगा। एक दुरूद भेजे मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद पे। सल्ले अला मुहम्मदिन व आले मुहम्मद वज्जिल फरजहम। बेकसों के मददगार मौला अली, बेकसों के मददगार मौला अली, जुज तेरे कोई अपना सहारा नहीं। तेरा दर छोड़ कर जाए आखिर कहाँ, तेरा दर छोड़ कर जाए आखिर कहाँ। गैर का दर जबी को गवारा नहीं। जो अली का नहीं वो नबी का नहीं, जो नबी का नहीं वो खुदा का नहीं। ए मुसलमान असहाब से पूछ ले, क्या ये खैबर क्या ये खुम्मे नबी ने पुकारा नहीं। या अली आए काबे में जिस दम अली के कदम, मुंह के बल गिर पड़े बुत ये कहते हुए। अरे आइए आइए जानशीने नबी, ये तुम्हारा ही घर है हमारा नहीं। बेकसों के मददगार मौला अली, जुज तेरे कोई अपना सहारा नहीं। वो तो कम ज़र्फ है जो तुझे छोड़ दे, वरना मौला अली तेरी ताजीम को जो पलट कर ना आए वो सूरज नहीं। जो ना चौखट को चूमे वो तारा नहीं। बेकसों के मददगार मौला अली, जुज तेरे कोई अपना सहारा नहीं। पहले तारीख खैबर की पढ़ लीजिए, फिर कोई आखिरी फैसला दीजिए। या ये कहना पैगंबर भी हैं बिदअती, या ये कहना पैगंबर भी हैं बिदअती। या ये कहना अली को पुकारा नहीं। बेकसों के मददगार मौला अली, जुस तेरे कोई अपना सहारा नहीं। बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत। एक ये मीर हसन की मनक़बत है, मैं बड़ी हिम्मत करके कोशिश कर रहा हूँ इसको पढ़ने की। पहली मरतबा पढ़ा, एक और दूर भेजे मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद पे। साहिबे ज़ुल्फ़िकार अल मददे, शाहिदुल दुल सवार अल मददे। काम मुश्किल है बाइमदाद खुदा कर दूंगा, आज मैं इश्क का तूफान बपा कर दूंगा। करने दो मुझे साक़ी कौसर की सना, करने दो मुझे साक़ी कौसर की सना। राज अल्लाह की तौहीद है, हम राज अली। किबरियाई की दलीलों का है आगाज अली। दिल बे दिल से जो निकली है वो आवाज अली। आसमां साज ज़मीं साज बशर साज अली। कार तख्लीक बताई दयागद करता है। अरे ये वो बंदा है जो खालिक की मदद करता है। करने दो मुझे साक़ी कौसर की सना। कर दें दो मुझे साक़ी कौसर की सना। मिंबरे आला में इमकान का खतीबे आज़म बोलता था तो ठहर जाते थे लम्हों के कदम। मेरा इस बात पे ईमान है कुरान की कसम। अरे लड़खड़ाता ना जो कम ज़र्फ़ नुसैरी के कदम। अपने हुबदारों को नबियों से बढ़ा देते अली। एक एक शख्स को सलमान बना देते अली। करने दो मुझे साक़ी कौसर की सना। और मख्ता के मदह हैदर में तकल्लुम ये तक़ैया कैसा। मसलहत कैसी अना कैसी बहाना कैसा। वक्त के साथ अकीदे को बदलना कैसा। मौत आनी है तो फिर मौत से खतरा कैसा। बंद ये इश्क का दरवाजा नहीं हो सकता। मैं अली पर कोई समझौता नहीं कर सकता। करने दो मुझे साक़ी कौसर की सना। करने दो मुझे साक़ी कौसर की सना। पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु।
Jazakallah khair, Brother Faizan. Another loud salawat for him, please. Respected Sayyid, elders, brothers and sisters of faith, Assalamu alaikum. Congratulations to all the believers and the Imam of our time on this auspicious Eid. A special thank you to Sayyid Hasan for accepting our invitation. Your presence is always a blessing for our community. Benefiting from your knowledge, your jokes, and overall just being here is a blessing for us all. For the safety for Sayyid Hasan, his family, and inshallah a quick return to CFK, allow salawat please. Just a few reminders before I request the Sayyid to begin his speech for tonight. Please note there will be Jummah Salat this upcoming Friday led by Maulana Irtaza Naqvi. For more details, please visit our WhatsApp group for specific timings. A special thanks to the Al Ain Foundation last night for providing chocolate treats for celebrating this auspicious occasion. Please note they will be on site tonight to facilitate the trade-in and collection of sadaqah boxes. We do encourage everyone to participate in this meaningful initiative. This upcoming Friday, June 28th, there is a family program beautifying our relationship with ourselves and others, open to the entire community, from 6 to 9 p.m. here at TFK. The guest speaker is Sister Maryam Munir. Please sign up, and for more information, please contact Sister Malahat or Manaz as well. We would like to remind our parents about our dedicated mother's room. This room has a live feed and has been set up so our kids can be accompanied by their mothers and get accustomed to sitting and listening to the programs in a lighter, less restrictive setting. With this, we hope to bring ease to our programs, attendees, and mothers for these upcoming nights. Before I request the Sayyid to ascend the member, I would like to request a Surah Fatiha for the marhumeen of tonight's program sponsors. Let us also include our own marhumeen and mu'minat and those of the Muslim Ummah. At this time, I'd like to request the Sheikh to ascend the member for his speech for tonight, and request the brothers and sisters to please move as close to the stage as possible with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Thank you. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد. ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And once again, I wish all of you a Eid Mubarak. Last night, we were talking about, or at least one of the points that we had made, was that it was tough for the Arabs of that time to accept this idea of wilayah. Right? It was very difficult for them. And we talked about this idea, and we've heard this over and over again, about how one of their major issues was this idea of tribalism, which sometimes we go to the Arabic of ta'assub or asabiyah. Right? That they were stuck in this tribal way, and that somehow led to them not accepting the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam and Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wa salam, salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And it's, I think, easy for us to judge them really harshly. Like, oh, how could they not do it, right? A prophet comes to them, declares all these things, all these mu'jizat are done in front of them. Why are these guys denying it so much? Like, what's the issue here? And we might think that, hey, if somebody comes to me and in front of me, they're explaining something rationally, somebody with perfect character, there's mu'jizat and miracles performed before me, then I'm going to do everything that person says. I think we have this sort of idea in our mind that we would just magically become the best people possible if something like that happened. That if we had lived in that time of the Prophet or the time of the Imams, we would be the best Muslims, the best Shias possible. Well, one thing we have to really understand, and maybe it's because we haven't really gone in depth ever, is really what was going on back in that era. This phrase that's used sometimes. We talk about this Zaman al-Asr al-Jahiliyyah, the era of Jahiliyyah, the era or age of ignorance as it's sometimes translated. And we hear that they had all these weird practices and they were doing things which didn't make sense and irrational behavior. And again, we judge them pretty harshly. Without understanding the context of how that society actually was created, then us looking at their behavior won't really have that much of a connection. And specifically, some of the ayat of the Quran, which condemn the behavior of the Arabs, things that we know that they did during Jahiliyyah, that we know very well, say, oh, I can't believe they're doing things like this. Yeah, for you and I, in this day and age, it sounds like they were doing jahil things. I can't believe they did that. But if we don't understand how those ideas and practices developed, and I'm not saying the whole point of what we're going to discuss tonight is not to excuse their behavior, it's not to develop some sort of sympathy or empathy for them, but is to understand what was going on back there, and again, to figure out why was it so difficult for them to actually accept Islam in the way that should have been accepted. Why was it especially difficult for them to accept the wilayah of the Ahlul Bayt? Like, what exactly was happening there? And some of the very specific practices that they had, why didn't they want to change it? Why did they fight the Rasulullah at so many different junctures? So that's something that we want to try to discuss tonight with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So, picture this, right? You're all alone, let's say stranded on an island. You're looking around, right? You're trying to gather resources, or you're trying to stay alive. You need to find food, shelter, things like that. Those of you who have seen movies like Castaway, well, something like that. And maybe you have certain skills that you've learned, right? And you're trying to gather food and things like that, but let's say the resources are limited, right? Maybe by yourself, maybe you'll be okay, maybe not. Then you notice that, hey, there's some other people on this island too. But there's still limited resources. That hasn't changed. It's like, okay, if there's limited resources and there's maybe one or two other individuals, then maybe we can figure out a way to share. Right? It's not a big deal. We both have to survive. Okay, what if there's 5, 10, 100, 1,000 people who are now on this island and the resources are, again, the same amount? They're probably not enough for everybody. What happens? Do you think everybody's just going to magically work together? Probably not. Think about that kind of harsh, hostile environment, right? That picture is what was going on in sort of pre-Islamic times, right? The picture that we have of a desert, that's what's happening there. It's very tough to find water. There's hardly any land. Even if you have an animal, where can you actually graze your animal? It's tough. If you do end up finding water, then what's going to happen? If I'm by myself and I find a well or I find some stream and I start using it, again, it's limited. If somebody else comes along and wants it, maybe I'll get lucky and they say, hey, can we share? Maybe. Or maybe they might say, no, I want that, and I'd rather you not use it, so maybe I'll get rid of you. This is the harsh environment that these Arabs were living in at that time. So they realized that, hey, if we do this one by one, if we're all on our own as individuals, this is not going to work. We're all going to kind of vanish. We're going to get wiped out. So from this, over time, that's how these ideas of tribes developed. They said, look, the only way this is going to work is if we come together in certain groups and realize that we have to protect each other like that. We live for the tribe. And if we see then that there's a rival tribe that's coming for our resources, now we have a system in place that you do everything for this tribe and you go out and defend. And hey, maybe, because we can set the rules, if we realize that we're running out of resources, then we got to go take this from another tribe. So what the Arabs were doing at that time, this constant fighting and conflict that you hear about, wasn't just because they felt like fighting all the time. And eventually did get to that, but it's coming from a place where they wanted to survive. They needed to survive. So they had to go and get resources. And that's how these sort of tribal conflicts sort of developed. Think about this similar to prison. Like you've seen like these prison movies and things like that. When somebody comes in prison, what's the sort of cliche thing they have to do? Is you got to join a gang, right? Because on your own, you won't survive. So the same thing for the Arabs. If you want to survive, you need to be a part of a tribe. That's the only way you can survive in that environment. So this is slowly how this idea of banding together, forming a tribe, and surviving came about. Now, how does a tribe actually work? It's simple. It's not like everybody gets their own opinion. Everybody can go and do it what they want. The tribe has a chief or a leader. They kind of set the standard of what's going on, and everybody else has to follow suit. Whatever issues happen to the tribe, to any individual, becomes the issue for the whole tribe. So if one member of the tribe goes out and let's say gets into some argument or issue with somebody else, even if let's say we're all part of one tribe, for example, if let's say one of our own fellow tribesmen, they go out and they harm somebody else, They verbally abuse somebody else, so they're in the wrong. And now there's going to be a conflict. That tribe comes to us and say, hey, this so-and-so member of your tribe did this to us. Now, what are we going to do? Well, as part of one tribe, it doesn't matter who's right or wrong, we stick with our tribe. That's how you survive. Say, it doesn't matter what our tribe's person did, we're going to defend them. Right? The tribe, or as we kind of say, blood is thicker than water. Right? That's the idea. And that goes to the next point too. How do you even develop these tribes in the first place? Do you just grab a bunch of random individuals and say, hey, let's make a tribe? No, because how do you know who to trust? If, again, we're existing as some tribe, some random person comes on their horse or camel or whatever, it's like, hey, can I join your guys' tribe? All right? It doesn't work like that. We can't trust this person. We don't know what's going on. We don't know where they came from. Are they a spy? Do they have good intentions? We have no idea. So we have to figure out, who do we allow in? So who's the only person, who are the only people we can truly know? It's our own families. So what tribes were really were just a collection of local families, and that's it. So this idea of blood and lineage became very, very important to them, right? Because a family now, a father can say, look, I've raised this child myself, his loyalty is to this tribe, even more so than his father. So this was the nature of what was going on back there. So much so that when other empires, there's basically three major empires, or two major empires that existed at that time. You have the Sassanid Empire, the Persians or Iranians, and then you have the Byzantines, right? The Romans. They were the pretty much two big civilizations, empires. And what were they? They were monarchs, right? It was a monarchy, so they had kings. But none of them actually went after the Arabs. Maybe in between the Byzantines and the Iranians, they would fight amongst each other, they would go for land and power and conflict and all that, but they never actually went after the Arabs. Because they saw that, look, these guys are just fighting amongst themselves. There's no resources there. They're no good to us. What's the point? So they didn't even bother with them. But there was always some level of interest in how their society ran. How did this tribal society function? How do your chiefs, how does all this work? So you had some individuals who would write letters to some of the tribal leaders, the Arab leaders. So for example, Khusro, one of the Iranian kings, I think this was Khusro II, asked one of the Arab Christian tribes, a person by the name of Nu'man ibn Mundhir, who was the head of a tribe in what we'd call like the south area of Kufa, if we're going back to that time. So he asks him, he's like, how come you Arabs don't have a central government? He says, us, meaning the Iranians, the Byzantines, every other empire, they've got a king, the king's got their knights or their army, whatever, and that's how they function. And all the orders come from there. We're centralized, we're unified, that's how we work. Right? The stuff that you've all read in your history books. This is how most of these empires function. But the Arabs weren't like that. There was no central government. It was like the Wild Wild West, right? Just a bunch of tribes fighting for power and control and things like that. So this Iranian king is asking, why don't you guys have this system? So this Arab Christian leader responds. He says, look, this is how you and your nations developed. You saw that there were some weaknesses in your nation, in your land. And you were in fear, rightfully so, that enemies could come in and take your land and fight for you. So what did you guys decide to do? You decided that you wanted to entrust your affair to one specific family of individuals, a royal family. They became the royal, monarchy. And that's how you guys decided to protect yourself. That we're putting this royal family in charge, they're going to protect everybody else in here, right? They're the ones. It's in a sense how a federal republic kind of works too, right? We don't have any direct say of what happens in America. We vote for people who then kind of handle business, right? So this is how a monarchy worked too. It was representative. They decided, hey, here's a monarch, here's a king, or here's the queen, whatever. They're going to handle all our affairs. They'll defend our borders. They'll make sure our economy is good. That's what they'll do. And everybody was unified under that sort of king. But this Arab Christian leader says, Arabs though, again, this is the pre-Islamic time, right? He says, Arabs, on the other hand, the problem is that each one of them wants to be a king themselves. They're not willing to give up their own power, that own sort of individual desire they have. And they all want to be a king themselves. And the only way you can really be a king, if there's a bunch of other people who also want to be kings and queens, is that, hey, we all kind of have to take turns and work together and stop everybody else from becoming kings too. So what a tribe really was a bunch of individuals with egos who came together and said, we all have to protect our egos together. That's what a tribe really was. He said, you guys have kind of squashed your egos a little bit, and that's why you can give power to somebody else. But we Arabs, we can't do anything like that. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So they had this idea of individualism, right? They all had their ego. They wanted to survive. They wanted their desires fulfilled. All of this, the Arabs did. But they said that we can't fulfill it on our own. It's impossible. We can't do it. It's not going to work out practically. So the only way we can live our lives with true freedom is what? We form a tribe. Then we can do whatever we want. And that's exactly how it functioned. So a way of describing it is this. What's more dangerous than one kind of ignorant, arrogant, volatile nafs and ego? Is when you take two of those. What's more dangerous than two egos is three. What's more dangerous than 3? 5, 10, 15, right? When you start putting them all together. And that's what a tribe ended up becoming. This is the environment. Again, I'm giving you this background so we understand what's going on when Rasulullah is coming and trying to unite them under Tawheed. These guys don't understand that. Even when it comes to their idol worship, which we're all familiar with, that they worship idols. Do you know that not every tribe worshiped the same idol? Some of these tribes and clans, they had different idols in the Kaaba that they worshipped. One clan would say, look, these 3 idols, these are the ones we worship. But the rest of them we don't. Another tribe would come and say, no, we don't do these 3, we do these ones over here. So even amongst that, there was tribal conflict there too. Right? So that's kind of how it functioned. We have modern day terms for these kind of ideas, right? Call it patriotism, call it nationalism, where somebody decides for the good of everybody else, so to speak, or for one common idea, we are going to throw away our own sort of individual desires and needs, right? That's kind of what happens, like people who are overly zealous about their own nation and their own state, things like that. Okay. So now we hopefully have a background in understanding that. We have an idea of where their trust lied, right? It was only with their local family, and that's how their clans would get bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, again, you have limited resources. If we're running out, right, of, let's say, water, we need to go for more resources. We realize that there's a much bigger clan or a tribe. They've got access to this big well, and we need access to that. But if our tribe or our clan, let's say, only has 100, and their tribe or clan has 1,000, then clearly it's not going to work out. So we have 2 options. Or 3 options, really. We do nothing, and then we end up dying, probably. Or we try to make some sort of alliance, which goes against our ego. We can't do that, right? Not going to work. And maybe that bigger tribe or clan doesn't even want an alliance. Why do they want to share their resources? It's worse for them. Or the third is what? We've got to wait it out, increase the size of our tribe and our clan until we're big enough, we're strong enough, then we can go take them over and wipe them out. When you have this context in mind, now go back and look at the ayat of the Quran and look at how these individuals are condemned. If, again, the family is what? The family is just an extension of that person, like the father who's running it and controlling it. That family is just a part of the clan and tribe. They are trying to grow, to expand, right? It's like whoever plays Risk, that's what you're trying to do, just take more territory over and over and over again to secure resources. So now think about this. In this society, if you had a choice in this society, put yourself in that society. If you had a choice between having a son or a daughter, what would you choose? Who can go out and actually fight on your behalf? Is it going to be your daughters? No, it's going to be sons. Who can actually go out in the fields? Who's going to go and gather water if there's a possible conflict? It's going to be men. It's not going to be women. So, when you now think back to them and how upset they got when they're daughters, this is the reason. They said, this is not beneficial to our tribe whatsoever. This is actually going to hurt us. Our tribe is now weaker because of this. Right? Now let's go back to the Quran. Let's look at Surah Al-Nahl, Surah 16, ayat 58 to 59. If you can recite, As-salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَإِذَا بُشِّرَ أَحَدُهُمْ بِالْأُنْثَى. Whenever one of them was given good news of the birth of a daughter, a female. ظَلَّ وَجْهُ مُسْوَدًّا وَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. Their face became darkened and they had to suppress their grief. Like on one hand, I mean, the birth of a child is an amazing thing. So like every father here knows, every mother here knows, like, oh my God, the birth of a child is one of the happiest days of a parent's life. But then, again, in the back of their mind too, they're like, okay, but it's a daughter. This hurts our tribe now. How is this going to help us? This makes us even weaker. The other people who are part of our tribe, if somebody else has more sons, they get more prestige, more honor in the tribe. Our little part of the clan, my little family is not helping out the tribe anymore. I'm not going to get any honor. I have no status. I'm nothing to this tribe now if I just have a bunch of daughters. Right? So they had to suppress that grief inside, like, I can't believe this. Next ayah. يَتَوَارَ مِنَ الْقَوْمِ مِنْ سُوءِ مَا بُشِّرَ بِهِ أَيُمْسِكُهُ عَلَى هُونٍ أَوْ يَدُسُّهُ فِي التُّرَابِ أَلَا سَاءَ مَا يَحْكُمُونَ. these individuals, this person, the father, would go hide himself from the people because of what he believed to be that ill. This was a bad news. He felt like this was bad news that he's been given. And then what? Now he's got two choices in front of him. Should I keep this daughter of mine and live in humiliation in my tribe? Or what? Bury it in the ground. And then Allah says, unquestionably, what they're doing, regardless, is evil. Now, again, we're not excusing their behavior, obviously. This is a disgusting thing that these individuals are doing. But I'm trying to figure out, we're trying to understand their mindset here, is when they're having these daughters, this is of zero benefit to them. This is not helpful to them. Yes, emotionally, they're building these connections and all this, but their tribe's going to get weaker. This is going to, they're not going to survive now. Think about, again, this may not be the best analogy, but think about how individuals now who decide to have children and they don't have, let's say they decide to, out of wedlock, whatever it is, many non-Muslims and things like that, who have unplanned pregnancies, etc. And let's say they're already in financial difficulty. When they find out they're pregnant, instead of being joyous and happy, then usually they think of, unfortunately, the certain things which are allowable in, let's say, blue states, if you know what I mean, right? They think of these kind of ideas. Why? Because they're like, this is a financial burden on us. This doesn't help us. These are modern day ideas. Yes, it's jahiliyyah from back then, but you see the same thing is happening now too. The same concern that people have, they get upset. Like, we should be happy that, and before it was just daughters. Now as any child, some people get upset when they find out that there's a child that may be born. Right? This is the nature of what was going on back then. So now, with that too, what makes more sense for me too, as somebody as part of that society? Is it better for me to have a small family or a large family? To be helpful to the tribe, what's better? A large family, obviously, right? The more resources I can provide to the tribe, the better, especially if I'm giving male heirs, if I have sons. If, for example, I've got 5, 10 sons that I'm providing to the tribe, I'm getting honor and prestige. I can say, yes, my sons are the ones that are going out and they won this battle for us. They secured that well for us, or this is the animals that they stole from this tribe. Yes, my sons did that. So now my honor, my prestige goes up. If now they need to pick a new tribal leader, they're going to look at me because of what I provided to the tribe. Right? That's how they were looking. So now, again, just thinking very pragmatically and rationally, how can you increase, what's the easiest way to have more children, to increase your chances? Is you need to have more wives. You need to get more people pregnant. And that's why they would just have multiple individuals that they would either marry or not marry. Right? It wasn't a really big deal to them. They would try to have large families because they wanted more people. It was just volume for them. It was just a numbers game. Right? When you see that, it got to such a degree that they would compete with one another and kind of show this level of arrogance about how large their families were. And it wasn't just about how large my living family is. They would go, right? Let me give you the ayat of the Quran, right? This is in Surah Al-Takathur, right? Surah 102, ayat 1 through 2. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhaakum al-takathur hatta zurtumul maqabir. That takathur, competition, counting, right? Going back and forth with one another has pushed them away and distracted them. So much so that they did this hatta zurtumul maqabir, when they went to the graveyards. So what are they doing when they go to the qabristan and the graveyards? They're going there and say, hey, look at all these graves, that's my family. These people, all those hundreds of graves you see, my family gave blood for this tribe. And they would count and they would compete like this. Even in their own tribe, they would compete like this. So this is the stuff that the Quran is addressing. Is the mindset that they have is large families, increase as much as possible, take all these resources. This is what they're after. I don't want daughters, I want sons, I want to do this as much as possible. I'll be promiscuous, whatever it takes so I can have as many people as possible. Is this an irrational decision? Not at all. And we mentioned this last night too. Sometimes something that's very rational, which is meant for survival, of course is the most evil thing possible, but again, we're not excusing, we're not trying to empathize, we're just trying to understand. How difficult is it now for Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, to come to a society, a people like this, and say, look, I know that you're all separated in your different tribes, you have all these tribal allegiances, and that's it. You want these large families at whatever the cost is, you want only sons, but guess what? Daughters have a lot of value. And according to some of our ulama, they have more value than men, than boys. Or that I want all of you to unite under one banner of Tawheed. And they were like, what do you mean one banner? What do you mean we're all united? La ilaha illallah إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا وَنَحْنُ لَهُ مُسْلِمُونَ. Dua wahda with that context is a very difficult thing for them. He said, you want us all to submit to one God? But we've been doing like different gods for so long. Our tawassul has always been to these different idols. And we took pride in that this tribe did one, this tribe did another. And you all want us to do the exact same thing? That doesn't make sense. Right? They couldn't comprehend something like that. I said, wait, you want us to have daughters and be happy about that? How? How is that going to help our tribe out? Why would that be beneficial? Right? The same way that you and I ask questions about ahkam sometimes, right? How does this fiqhi thing make sense? How does Allah say that that's beneficial for insan to do this or to not eat this or whatever it is? How is that helpful? How is giving zakat helpful or khums helpful? Like, what is this? How does this stuff make sense? Well, the same thing for them. They're using their aql too. They're being rational. Like, how is this stuff helping us out? And sometimes they get the explanation, and sometimes Allah would say, look, I'm sending you a Rasul on purpose because this is what's supposed to save you in terms of your whole society. Why? Otherwise, you're going to all wipe each other out. There will be nothing left. Rasulullah was literally there to save them all and say, look, this is not the way you survive, by splitting up into your different tribes and fighting amongst one another. If all of you come together, then you will be the strongest civilization of all time. That's the idea. If you can all unite under that banner of Tawheed, then nobody will be able to stop you. Not the Byzantines, not the Iranians of that time. Nobody else can stop you. But you see, little by little, how they moved farther and farther away from it. That's how you see those same splits that Rasulullah tried to stop. You see, again, right after his death, you see how quickly it came back. Why? Because many of them never got rid of that idea. As much as they accepted the message, like we mentioned last night at Ghadeer, that somebody said, look, we'll pray, we'll fast, we'll do all that stuff. But if you want me to give up our ideas of tribalism, then forget it. I'm not doing that. If you want me to submit to some young kid as being the wali and the imam, I'm not doing that. Why? Because our tribal ways say that the eldest needs to be in charge. Who is this young kid, Ali? He doesn't make any sense. Right? All those same cultural ideas were stuck in their mind and they couldn't break out of them. And these same cultural points, if you look back at Saqifa, even the tribes that were there at Ghadeer, everybody who put their hand in Imam Ali's hand, the same points they were bringing up. They said, yeah, is this political expedient? What did we used to do back then? Right? And this is how the Muhajirun and Ansar were arguing about things like this. Especially the Muhajirun. They were ones who were bringing their own tribal ways up. The Ansar, alhamdulillah, were a little bit better, although it didn't really benefit too much. But they got rid of a bit more of those tribal instincts. But you still see, at the end of the day, Ghadeer, whatever happens to be, as many of these individuals could not stop that. Even now, you connect this with Karbala. Imam Hussein alayhi salam, when he's in front of these individuals, and he's like, I don't understand. You know who I am. You know my father. You know my mother. You know my grandfather. You know my lineage. And again, this was important to the Arabs. If you know and honor my lineage, then why are you taking out a sword against me? Why are you fighting against me? And they answered, he said, we know who you are. We know your lineage. We know it's honorable. You're the best among, they knew all that. He said, but we have hate for your father. And the reason they had hate for their father, if you all remember, why? Because for those individuals, all those tribes who were there present, facing Imam Hussein alayhi salam and his companions and family, Imam Ali alayhi salam was the one who was wiping their tribal leaders at Badr, at Hunayn, at Khandaq, at all these other places. They said, so that hatred in our hearts hasn't gone away yet. They might have accepted Islam, but that tribal hatred that was there, that tribal revenge they wanted, blood, right, thicker than water. They didn't accept Islam to that degree. They said, yeah, that's why we're coming after you now. This is why you can say whatever you want, you can be whoever you want, we could have put your hand in your father's, doesn't matter. That hatred is still within us, and that's why we're coming after you. This is how much, when a dark spiritual disease like this enters into somebody, how much it can take over their mind and even take over whatever religious principles they may have established. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Let's go back and look at some other ayat. When they then see, now imagine this, again, we're going back. Remember that they wanted these big families, more sons. So now you think back. If, let's say, you see other people in your tribe, they're trying to have many sons to raise their status in the tribe. And they end up having either no kids, or maybe daughters, or maybe a mix of daughters and sons. And let's say me, after son, after son, after son, after son. I just keep giving birth to many sons, and they're strong. And they start fighting for the tribe, and they do really well. Then obviously it's going to boost my ego a little bit. And remember, they still believe in some kind of God, right? They believe in Allah as a khaliq, a creator, but they have all these idols too. So what do they think? As many people do. When they get these quote-unquote blessings, when things seem to go right in their life, what does everybody think? Allah has blessed me, right? So what do they say? Look in Surah 34, I think Surah Saba, ayat 35 through 37. وَقَالُوا نَحْنُ أَكْثَرُ أَمْوَالًا وَأَوْلَادًا وَمَا نَحْنُ بِمُعَذِّبِينَ. These Arabs at that time, they would say, we have more wealth and we have more children, so that's why we are not going to be the punished individuals. There's no adhab for us. We're like, Allah's blessing us. Look at us. Look at my family. Look at my wealth. I'm doing great. Right? There's a doctrine that they have in some sects of Christianity. It's called the prosperity doctrine, where you see these big evangelical like churches, these guys who have these giant private planes and big mansions and stuff. You know, if our Maraja, our ulama, had a private jet, a big mansion, you know what Shias would say about that. They say, you know, that's not appropriate. How can they have all this stuff? But for those the Christians who believe in this prosperity doctrine, especially the kind of evangelical branch, they believe that this is God blessing me. God has showered his blessings upon me and given me this big private jet and all this stuff. Like I've got the Holy Spirit in me. Like that's what they believe. So they collect all this money from people and they say, see, God blesses me with wealth, with all these things. And I'm going to shower and I'm going to keep spending it and enjoying my life. That's what they think. That's completely the exact opposite for us. I mean, there's nothing wrong with wealth, obviously. But this idea that some people have is the more that they get, they think that automatically that means Allah has blessed their life. We have narrations that say the opposite, but the same thing was happening to the Arabs there too. That they thought everything was growing for them, their money, their wealth, their kids, everything. Said, yeah, that must mean that God is on our side. But sometimes what happens is that these things increase because Allah realizes that you, as an individual, are stubborn. So I'm going to increase these things to actually increase your punishment. And these happen to certain individuals. And then Allah says in the next ayah, قُلْ إِنَّ رَبِّي يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. Yes, Allah is the one who gives out rizq to whomever He wants. وَيَقْدِرُ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And He can increase it, He can also restrict it too, and only Allah knows, and most people do not understand how these things kind of open and close. They don't know where and how rizq should be given. The most muttaqi individual could be the biggest one in poverty. And the most punishable individual could be the one who's living in wealth. Or it could be the other way around. The wealthiest person could be the one who's getting a straight ticket to Jannah, and you can have somebody in poverty because they didn't have sabr with that difficulty, that they could be going to hellfire too. These kind of things are in Allah's hands, and He tests people according to what they want. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So I wanted to give us again an understanding of the nature of these tribes and these clans and things like that. There's one other point that I wanted to quickly just mention before we end. I don't think I'll have time to go through this, but you know, we mentioned this in the beginning, this idea about jahiliyyah, right? When we think about this word jahil or jahiliyyah, you know, what comes in our mind? You know, what exactly are we thinking about? When we think about being jahil or having this jahalat or jahil, we think about the opposite of that being ilm, right? Either you are an alim to something or jahil to something. Either you have ilm, knowledge in regard to something, or jahalat or jahil in regard to something, right? So that's what most people think. Either I have information about something or I don't have information. So, for example, we probably would use it in this understanding, that if I don't have in-depth knowledge about how black holes are formed, I don't know about that, then that means I'm jahil to that. That's what many people would say, yeah, that seems like a correct usage of it, right? I don't have the ilm of black holes or, let's say, quantum mechanics or whatever it happens to be. So that means there's jahalat, there's jahl, because I don't understand, I don't have the information. So although that might be the way you and I understand it based on, let's say, Urdu or Farsi or the other way that it's used, or even modern day Arabic, maybe it's used like that, it's not a precise way of how jahil or jahl is used in that pre-Islamic or that Arab language. That's not exactly how it was used back then. It doesn't just mean the opposite or lack of knowledge. Jahala is something a bit different. So the way that the ulama describe it is this. Sometimes they say we can describe it based on the effects. So what happens? When somebody has ilm, what's the result or consequence of having knowledge, right? You know, sometimes when you have this question in your mind, you're trying to research something, and maybe you're searching and you don't get the answer. Sometimes it takes hours, sometimes it takes days, months, and then one day finally, either by chance or sometimes because you're doing the research, you finally get the answer, right? You get that aha moment, right? You get that sukoon, itminan, like wow. You feel good when you get that answer. You feel good about that. So they say that that is the result of ilm. When you get ilm, you're in a state of sukoon, of itminan, you're calm, you're peace. Like it puts you at ease. Like, okay, now I have this piece of knowledge. That gap that I had, it's being filled. They say jahl, or when somebody has that, it leads to the opposite. When somebody's in a state of jahl, they have this idea of being uneasy, right? They're stressed out, they're anxious. And it's not just because of a lack of knowledge, there's something else there too. You see, when somebody has true ilm of something, as again, it's not just information. It's information that's actually put to use. Ilm, in the real sense, is when I have information and I actually act upon it and I put it to use. So, if I know that, okay, ghiba, backbiting is haram, then if I have ilm, real ilm of that, that means I should never be doing ghiba. I should never backbite. That's simple. If I am doing it, if I'm performing ghiba, if I am backbiting, that means I don't actually have real ilm of the nature of ghiba. I don't really understand that. How could somebody have true knowledge of something leading them to hellfire and burning their soul like that and still do it, right? Only a fool would do something like that. And that's what jahalat actually is. Jahala is that somebody might have the knowledge, maybe, but there's no harakat, there's no action, there's no motion there. They're actually lazy about it. And this is actually what was happening in that Arab society, that pre-Islamic era of Jahiliyyah. It wasn't that they didn't have information. They had a lot of information. They knew things. They had pieces of information. That wasn't the problem. The problem was whatever they did have, they said, it doesn't matter what we know, we still want to act out our own desires. So even though deep down they might have known that it's not a good idea to, let's say, go and start fights with everybody, start these tribal conflicts, bury my daughter alive, whatever it is, said, we're still going to do it anyway. Even though they knew that, speaking to somebody in this way, being arrogant or ignorant, it's not a good thing, they would do it anyway. Basically, a better translation for jahal or jahalat is not ignorance, but say immaturity. Is being immature, right? You say, stop acting like a child, stop being immature. When somebody has information, but they refuse to act upon it. Like, why are you acting like this? Right? A mature person is disciplined too. When they have the information, they go and they act it out. So jahala in that sense meant one of two things. Either they had the information and they decided not to go against it, they had the information and they went against it, meaning they didn't act it out, or they completely acted out in the other way of just acting out their desires. Again, they were just immature individuals. A bunch of just kids, little kids running around. That's what was happening there. Right? So that was what was going on in that society. And so when you look at the riwayat, I don't think we have time to go through too many of them, but you see that is the kind of way that jahalat is described. Let me share, I guess, one of these. This is coming from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. So he's reported to have said, Al-mu'min halim la yajhal. A mu'min is somebody who's halim. Somebody that has this sense of perseverance, right? That can push through an action. La yajhal, meaning they're not inactive. They don't, when they have information, they don't hold back. They're going to go for it and they're going to perform that action. وَإِن جُهِلْ عَلَيْهِ يَحْلُمْ. And if somebody acts jahil towards them, if somebody's acting immaturely towards them, inappropriately towards them, what happens? Yahlum. They have sabr. They're okay. A mu'min won't act out back to them, right? It's kind of, if you did this to me, eye for an eye sort of thing. You insulted me, I'm going to insult you, right? Fight fire with fire is not the way that a mu'min acts. He said, no, if you hit me with fire, I'll respond with water. I'll try to put out your fire. That's the way a mu'min responds. So all these kind of, common political ideologies we hear, fight fire with fire, this is not the ideology of a mu'min. A mu'min sees the fire in somebody else and they try, number one, to make sure the fire doesn't build up within them. If it does, they put out that fire with water, and then they also try their best to use that same water and put out the other person's fire. That's what a mu'min does, right? They put everybody else in that state of iman. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. There's a few other points I wanted to remember. So I'll say it like this. So in the Quran, and I think I'll just mention these, I won't have time to go in detail. In the Quran, when Allah talks about jahiliyyah, the word is not used too often, like the actual word jahiliyyah. It's actually used only 4 times. In the Quran, jahiliyyah is only used 4 times. In riwayat, it's been discussed in different ways, but it seems like Allah has focused on 4 specific types of behaviors that the Arabs engaged in then that seem to be a lesson and to be called out for them, and hopefully a lesson for you and I as well. So I'll quickly go through those so at least we have in our mind, and for those who want to do more research, they can do more research, right? So the first time that Jahiliyyah is mentioned in the Quran, or at least one of the times, is in Surah Ali Imran, Surah 3, Ayah 154. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. ثُمَّ أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكُم مِّن بَعْدِ الْغَمِّ أَمَنًا نُعَاسًا يَغْشَى طَائِفَةً مِّنكُمْ وَطَائِفَةٌ قَدْ أَهَمَّتْهُمْ أَنفُسُهُمْ يَظَنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ غَيْرَ الْحَقِّ ظَنَّ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. So, I don't want to go through the whole thing, but basically, there was, after distress, after gham, Allah sends down this amanat and security. One group overcame another group, and one of these groups became worried, and they were thinking the incorrect things about Allah, right? That they were assuming and having this presumptions about Allah in the wrong way. So he says, يَظَنُّونَ بِاللَّهِ, they were making these assumptions about Allah, غَيْرَ الْحَقِّ, incorrect things. ظَنَّ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. Right? So the first time that it's mentioned is this idea of dhann al-jahiliyyah. What is that? Dhann al-jahiliyyah is an incorrect way of thinking about Allah. It's an immature and ignorant way. So the context is this. This was happening after Uhud. I have to give you the quick context here. What happens pre-Uhud is you have Badr. So Muslims are on top of the world, right? We came with 313 people. We beat thousands of people. So Muslims are like, God is on our side, right? We did well. Remember, we talked about this before. These Arabs had a problem where they always thought God was on their side after every little thing. Uhud happens, and what? It's a huge loss, right? A huge loss. So what do they think after that? A group of them say, God is not on our side anymore. And some of them even said, maybe this guy Muhammad is not even a prophet. That's why this is happening. So Allah reveals this ayah. Says, look, those who obeyed Rasulullah and stayed on that cliff and that mountain where Rasulullah told them to stay, those who obeyed his orders, they're fine. They have a state of sukoon and itminan. But all of you who are entertaining these wrong thoughts about Allah, you think that Allah is just going to bless you whenever you want? No. Whenever you disobey Allah, meaning you disobey Rasulullah, then you don't get whatever you want. You don't get a victory in war. Allah decides where to send a victory or where to send a loss. And because you disobeyed Rasulullah, meaning you disobeyed Allah, Uhud became a big loss for you. So all these individuals, again, they went back to their thinking of Jahiliyyah, that when we're on top of the world, that means God's with us. Otherwise, if we lose a battle, that means, no, God is not with us anymore. He's left us, right? There's no Islam. They start jumping to all these conclusions. So Allah's saying, this is Jahil way of thinking. This is not the way that you think about aqaid. I'll tell you when I send a victory or a loss. I'll tell you who to follow, what not to follow. I tell you how to engage in warfare and what to do, right? So that was the first one. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. All right, so we got namaz in 7 minutes, right? So I'll quickly just mention the rest. I don't think I'll go into detail. The second usage is in Surah Ma'idah, Ayah 5. Surah 5, Ayah number, I'm just going to go last part, which is Ayah number 50. The context starts in Ayah number 41. At the end, Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Afa hukm al-jahiliyyah yabghuna. Right? These people are doing hukm al-jahiliyyah. So the first one was dhann al-jahiliyyah. It's being jahil in terms of aqidah and aqaid regarding Allah and Islam. The second one, it says hukm al-jahiliyyah. And again, I can't give you the full context, but here's the short version of the story. Some Jews of that time, they came to Rasulullah and they asked him for a ruling. They said, what do we do when a certain person commits this kind of, zina, for example, right? What's the ruling? They, for many centuries, they had changed the rules in their own books, right? The rabbis had changed the rules. So they wanted Rasulullah to also say, yeah, our loophole works, so you tell us that the loophole is fine too. And Rasulullah said, no, you guys got it wrong. This is how it's always been. So he corrected them. So that point that Allah is addressing is that you guys can't make up ahkam as you want. And the reason why the Jews, like previous times, the reason they had done it is one of the king's daughters or sons had committed this act of zina. And the rabbis realized that, hey, if we punish the son of this elite family, we're going to get in trouble. So we'll change the rule a little bit so that we don't get in trouble. So they started changing the rule for the elites, the wealthy people. Allah says that's not how ahkam work. You don't get to change the rule so that you get favoritism. You don't get to change the rules because of nepotism, things like that, right? So this was what hukm al-jahiliyyah, which is a reminder to us that we don't start changing the ahkam as well too. When Rasulullah, or by extension the Ahlul Bayt, explains something, that is the hukm, right? We have this principle that whatever Rasulullah brought is halal and haram from that time until Yawm al-Qiyamah. So that was number 2. The third instance of jahiliyyah is in Surah al-Fath. In Surah al-Fath, Surah 48, Ayah 26. إِذْ جَعَلَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ الْحَمِيَّةِ. When the kuffar, this is post Hudaybiyah, the Quraysh, the Arabs, the Makkans, they didn't like Hudaybiyah. They weren't happy with that. So they had this anger in their hearts. They were really upset. So they had this hamiyah. Hamiyah means like this burning, belligerent sort of hatred that just, you want to just hurt everybody. Hamiyat al-jahiliyah. That's how it's described in the Quran. A jahil type of hatred, which again was a tribal type of hatred. So what had happened there was that they were not happy with the result of Hudaybiyah, right? The part of the agreement was that people who came to perform Hajj, they weren't supposed to be hurt. But when they did come for, some individuals did come for Hajj, and then they stopped them, right? The Arabs of that time, even though anybody should have been allowed to perform Hajj, even according to their own pagan, religion, everybody was allowed to. But they said, you know what? No, nobody's going to be able to do this. So they went back on their own sort of belief system, right? Not fighting Islam. They were so upset with what was happening with Rasulullah and the message that, you know what? We're so upset with this that we don't want anybody to perform Hajj anymore. We don't care. Right? So that was the third. The final usage, we have a few minutes left. And again, forgive me, I'm skipping all the context here, but I just want to give you these the last one. So the last one is in Surah Al-Ahzab, right? And this is in Ayah 33, right? So most of us know 33, right? Which is what? Ayat al-Tathir. But that's, innama, right? But that's the end part. The beginning part, there's something else going on over there, right? وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتُكُنَّ وَلَا تَبَرَّجْنَا تَبَرُّجَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ. So again, all those ayat in Surah Al-Ahzab, at least that part, were addressing the wives of Rasulullah, right? Now we know Ayat al-Tathir, or at least that part of the ayah is only for the Ahlul Bayt. That's different. This part in the beginning was telling the wives of the Prophet, stay in your homes and do not come and display yourselves outside. Do not do this tabarruj al-jahiliyyah, because that's the fourth usage. Do not come and, tabarruj, the way that you would translate it, tabarruj comes from burj. The word burj, you guys have heard if you went to Dubai. Burj Khalifa. Burj means tower. Why? It's something that sticks out like a sore thumb. It's something that attracts attention. Tabarruj is when you go out and you're attention seeking, right? You're flirting. You just want people to come and look at you. So what women would do back then is go out and try to attract everybody's attention in various different means. Even some of the wives of the Prophet were doing things like this. So Allah had to come and tell them, hey, you're not allowed to do that, right? You have to control yourself, right? You cannot go out and kind of flaunt yourself out like this. I'm not going to be able to continue with this because we have only 2 minutes left. But I wanted to quickly just kind of give you a background of what was happening in the tribal era. I wanted to mention some of the types of jahiliyyah which were mentioned in the Quran. And anybody wants the resources, I can send it to them afterwards, inshallah. And hopefully that gives us a better context of what the struggles really were for Rasulullah trying to spread this message. And why, even after the fact, you see these individuals, even if they give bay'ah to Imam Ali, why they just go back on their word afterwards. Why? Because they just reverted to their own tribal ways. Because that was unfortunately what was stuck in their hearts. Right? So hopefully that gives us a bit more context about how we see the failure of all these tribes continuing on from Rasulullah to Imam Ali to all the rest of the Imams. That some of these cultural things were never left. They still held on to them, and that's what caused so much pain and difficulty for the Ahlul Bayt. So I'll end here. I think we've got maybe a minute for Salah. Alhamdulillah, I wanted to thank City of Knowledge, this community, the committee here for their invitation, everybody for your patience, your kindness in attending and listening, for everybody who gave feedback. It's always an honor and a pleasure for me to attend. If there's anything that was said over these 2 nights which was beneficial, all khair comes from Allah, and we thank Allah for being able to learn from the Ahlul Bayt, benefit from the Quran and the teachings of our ulama and our marajib. And that's all we're benefiting from now in that system of wilayah. If there was anything that was said which was incorrect, or I said it too fast, which obviously tonight it was kind of like that, then I ask for forgiveness. If there's anything that I can do to correct it or explain more, then inshallah, hopefully you give me the chance to do so after the fact. The last thing too is whoever reserved the books yesterday, I did bring them with me. For those who are interested in those children's books, I'll be sending a box separately here, and then somebody over here will coordinate kind of sale and purchase of those books later on. Again, thank you once again. Hopefully, Allah provides us the tawfiq to be together, hopefully once again in the future. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Ahl Baytihi at-Tayyibin at-Tahirin.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد أشهد أن عليا ولي الله اللهم صل على محمد أشهد أن عليا حجة الله اللهم صل على محمد حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأشهد أن عليا حجة الله صلوات وسلامه عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله استغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا الله أكبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سمع له لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع له لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. سبحان الله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله. أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع له لمن حمد. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم يا من له الدنيا والآخرة. ارحم من ليس له الدنيا والآخرة. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والنجاة من النار ومن كل بلية والفوز بالجنة والرضوان في دار السلام وجوار نبيك محمد عليه وآله السلام اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أحسن
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن عليا ولي الله وأشهد أن عليا حجة الله صلوات وسلامه عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات إنك مجيب دعوات إنك على كل شيء قدير. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إلهي كيف أدعوك وأنا وكيف أقطع رجائي منك وأنت إلهي إذا لم أسألك فتعطيني فمن ذا الذي يسأله فيعطيني إلهي إذا لم أدعوك فتستجيب لي فمن ذا الذي يدعوه فيستجيب لي إلهي إذا لم أتضرع إليك فترحمني فمن ذا الذي يتضرع إليه فيرحمني إلهي فكما فلقت البحر لموسى عليه السلام ونجيته أسألك أن تصلي على محمد وآله وأن تنجني مما أنا فيه وتفرج عني فرجا عاجلا غير آجل بفضلك ورحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا سيد الشهداء بكربلاء يا أبا عبد الله، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، السلام عليكم يا أئمة المعصومين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي، السلام عليك يا حجة القائم بن حسن المهدي مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان من شر الشيطان، يا شريك القرآن يا خليفة الرحمن يا مظهر الإيمان، إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك واجعلنا من خير أعوانك وأنصارك وشياعك والمستشهدين بين يديك، السلام عليكم جميع المعصومين والأنبياء والمرسلين ورحمة الله وبركاته.